Hey, groupers. Pastor Marshall here in our old sanctuary. It's getting close to time to move into the new building. It's also getting close to time to be done with the book of Acts. We're going to big chunk today, chapter 25, chapter 26. I divided these two chapters into 5 scenes just to try to make it a little more palatable because it really is one big story. So let's try to unpack it today. To get you talking, if someone asked you, how does God speak to you? Or how have you heard from God? What would you tell them? What would your answer be? How have you heard from God? Have you ever had a time that you were sure that God was communicating with you? How did he do that? How did he do it? Just share with each other. Now, scene 1 in these 5 scenes, we have Festus going to Jerusalem to meet his constituency. The first thing that the Jews ask is for him to charge Paul. So it's been a long time, and I wonder, why do you think that this is still such a pressing issue for the Jews? Why is Paul such a front burner problem for them? Now, in scene 2, Festus is back in Caesarea, and he meets this Paul character that is all the talk of his very first visit, first day on the job. In verse 9, it says that Festus wanted to go to Jerusalem with Paul and try him there. Why would that please the Jews? Why does Paul at this moment appeal to Caesar? Why doesn't he want to go to Jerusalem? And then next in scene 3, Festus is surely pondering what he's going to do with this Paul character when he has this royal visit, Agrippa and Bernice. And Festus asks Agrippa to help him with charges against Paul. Remember, Festus is Roman. Agrippa is, he's half Jewish. He certainly knows all about Judaism. In fact, it says he was an expert in the Jewish religion. So he asks Agrippa to help him. There are layers, I think, to why. One, I've just given you. What are the layers to why do you think that Festus asked Agrippa for help? Now, in scene 4, Paul is brought before this party, this royal party, Festus, Agrippa, Bernice. Paul gets to give his testimony. The third time. It's pretty amazing. No other story in the book of Acts is as prominent as Paul's testimony. Luke wants us to know what Jesus did to make this 13th apostle, the apostle to the Gentiles. Third time, and this time it sort of comes right from Paul's mouth. We get his story, and so there are some new details. One particular detail, Paul records that Jesus says that it's hard to kick against the goad. What does that mean? What does it mean to kick against the goad? And how is Jesus using it as he talks to the Apostle Paul? Well, that finally brings us to the last scene, scene 5. Festus and Agrippa both respond to Paul's story. Why does Festus say to Paul, your reading, your learning has made you mad? And why does Agrippa think that Paul has converted him? Why does Agrippa ask if Paul thinks he has converted him so quickly? Where are these two responses coming from? Now, that's the 5th scene, but there is sort of a 6th scene. Before you close your Bibles, these 3, Festus and Agrippa and Bernice, kind of walk off stage and have their own private conversation. And so before you close your Bibles, what conclusion have they come to about Paul's guilt or about Paul's innocence in verses 31 and 32? Well, every week I challenge you to talk about what your favorite thing in this passage is and what you don't like. And then we just scratch a little bit on the commitments that we made in our weekend messages. So I like kicking against the goads. It's one of my favorite phrases in all of the Bible. I know I'm weird, but I just like it. What do I not like? Well, it's a bummer that Festus got lost in discussion. Paul and Agrippa are kind of digging deeper into the Jewish story and the prophets and the understandings of the suffering servant in the Old Testament, and Festus is just lost. And I don't like that. It's a good reminder for all of us that sometimes when we're talking to unchurched people, we'll lose them if we just go too deep into the weeds. Well, application. What are the 4 things, what I want you just to look at, Paul says that there are 4 things that Jesus did for him. The 4 things that Jesus does for us when he calls us, when he reaches out to us, when he comes into our lives. What are the 4 things that he wants to do? Now, in order for him to do those things, all 4 of them require for us to surrender. And so where we were making application this week was, where do you need to surrender this week? Where are you needing to surrender to God this week so that he can bring greater things into your life? 4 specific things in this passage. Well, I hope that you have a great study, and I look forward to seeing you this next weekend as we are getting just a couple of steps away from the end of Acts. God bless.